one of your favorite days is going to be actually making truffles. We're going to have about 6 or 7 flavors so that we'll get to taste a lot of things by the end of the day. But let me define a truffle to you first. A truffle is defined as a bite-sized ganache enrobed chocolate. Now, sometimes you'll see out in the industry, people will label anything a truffle. But a truffle is truly one bite, and it will 99.9% of the time have ganache in it. If it's a caramel truffle, now it's being called a bonbon. So make sure in your mind you know proper theory that a truffle is ganache. Now, when we start to do truffles, you can do them that really artisan way, which is where we pipe it. We pipe the ganache, we chill it, then you have to come back and hand roll it, chill it, and then enrobe it. Let it set, and then do final garnish. So what I want to teach you is how to do it commercial standard size. This is what Godiva uses. This is what Anna Shea uses. Anyone that sells truffles, they are using these pre-purchased shells. Now these shells, when you look at them, they come in 3 colors. They come in dark chocolate, milk, and white. And these are actually couverture. So you know that it's going to be high quality chocolate. And these shells, they're produced to be hollow. The shell itself is about a 1/16 of an inch in thickness. And you can see there's plenty of room to actually pipe your ganache. So what we get is perfect portion size. The only thing we have to think about is the ganache cannot be too warm. So we have a range of about 70 to 80 degrees for our ganache. Any warmer, it's going to start to melt the outside of the shell. And then we'll have a hard time enrobing it. So my truffle bite size ganache on the interior, and then we enrobe it in tempered chocolate, and then we'll do some final garnishing. So everyone today will get to pick what they want to do. The only thing that we would ask is if you pick the white shells, you need to use a white ganache on the inside. If you choose the milk, make sure your filling has milk chocolate. You don't want to bite into a white shell and enrobe it in white, and then have dark chocolate in the interior, because it will show through the enrobing, and then it will start to look a little bit sloppy. So white ganache goes in a white shell, okay? So I have started to do my shells. I'm going to do a hazelnut filling, and this is one that's chosen for us. So I made my ganache. The ganache, again, should be about 70 degrees, maybe up to 80 degrees, and I'm going to take my molds, and when I do this, I want to make sure that all my molds come out, because I don't want to fill these and then seal them and have them stick to the molds. Sometimes during shipping, it can get very warm. The chocolate might melt a little bit, and then it comes into your shop, and they will cling to the inside of these molds. So always move these and make sure that they're really ready to come out, okay? So my molds are good. I already have 2 rows filled. So you can see with my pastry bag, I do not have a tip in it, but I've cut it to the opening of about a number 3 or number 4. I didn't do that because our metal tips make the ganache go firm, and then I won't flow into the truffle shell very well. So no tip. I'm going to push my pastry bag all the way to the bottom. I'm going to fill these up until I see it just under that lip. Now it looks like I went over it a little bit, but in case I had an air pocket, this is going to settle in, and it's going to end up looking just like this one on my first row. The worst thing you can do is have air pockets inside of these truffle shells, because each one of these truffles sell for about $1.95 to $2.25 a piece. And so when someone bites into it, the last thing they want is to see a huge gap on the inside, because they're going to think they didn't get their money's worth. So again, you can see my pastry tip is going all the way into the shell. I start to pull the tip back up, and when I see the ganache, then I stop piping, and I let the chocolate flow. Now, in the perfect world, I would let these set for about a half hour. That's why I went ahead and filled 2 rows already. If you're nervous about it and you don't see it settling, you can do a gentle tap down to make sure that there aren't any air pockets in there, okay? So I'm going to let these guys settle, but I'm going to work with my first 2 rows. So my ganache is in. Now what I have to do, I couldn't enrobe right away because look, I have an opening. So what could happen during enrobing, because I'm going to hand roll all of these, this ganache could start to flow out. So what I have to do is called capping the truffle shell. So with my tempered chocolate, I'm just going to take and dip my finger in, and I'm going to seal the opening. And if at any point you had ganache that spilled over the edge, just take your gloved hand, wipe any ganache that you see on the outside of the shell. Like this one I overfilled a little bit. So I would just swipe my finger and I would just clean off that edge, because we want these to be completely sealed. We don't want ganache to come out. And believe it or not, if this ganache is not exposed to air, the shelf life of these truffles is about 6 to 8 weeks. So that is great on your production schedule. You schedule, once a month, maybe 2 days, where you crank out all these truffles or the molded bonbons that we're going to do next class. And then we just store them. Remember, chocolate we store at about 65 degrees away from direct sun. And it's great on your labor cost. It's great on your food costs as long as these are done beautifully. People can never get enough of these. And remember, the holidays are coming. So right now, chocolate is considered what's at market price, meaning it can fluctuate from day to day depending how much people had to bid, the manufacturers, to get the chocolate. So just like expensive meat and seafood, during the holidays, chocolate prices rise also. What we need to talk about too is when you know that your production schedule is going to deem you to do a lot of chocolate around the holidays or Valentine's Day, good chocolate will last 6 months up to a year. So if you see the price drop, please ask your food and beverage director to maybe stockpile a little chocolate for you, because that will help your food cost in the end run, because we all are accountable for food cost. So know when prices are about to spike, buy your chocolate on a downtime, and then just go ahead and hold it, okay? And we talked in the PowerPoint, you saw how to properly wrap your chocolate, make sure humidity isn't on it. So if you do buy bulk chocolate, get it again into a dark room, hold it 6 months up to a year, and you'll be good. Now what I want to wait for is for this cap that I just put on to set. I don't want to start to enrobe right away, because this will just rub off in my hand and the ganache could start to flow off. We learned when we learned how to temper chocolate that it can take, maybe 15 minutes for this to set. So I'm not going to rush this. I'm going to give it the time to allow this to set, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to show us how to enrobe. So as soon as these caps are set, I'll show you enrobing. So my caps are set. So what I want to do is start to enrobe. Now, when you do this, I'm going to have you put gloves on just because of the times. Normally, when you watch TV or YouTube, you don't see them wearing gloves. You don't have to wear gloves, but just know for now we're going to put some gloves on because we're going to resell these. I'm going to take my truffle, I'm going to dip it halfway in my cool chocolate, and I'm just going to start to go back and forth in my hand. What I want to try to do is get enough chocolate down so you don't see the equator on this truffle shell. So I can still see it, so I'm going to have to put a little bit more chocolate on, and I'm going to start to build up a little pool in my hand. So I'll only have to dip every other one in this bowl of chocolate. So this one's good. So now what I want to do is make sure my flat end goes down onto the silk pack. And I want to try to do a silk pack because that will always give me a flat bottom. You can do parchment paper, but sometimes parchment paper wrinkles and it won't look good on the bottom. So again, I'm going to roll, make sure you don't see the equator, and I'm going to place it. Now what you don't want to do is go like this and then re-dip and set it down, because we're going to start to get what's called feet, and that's where the chocolate will start to pool. Do you see that down at the very end? Let me move this. You'll start to get a flat lip, and that again will just show that there's actually too much chocolate on the truffle and your technique was not as good as it should have been. So look, see, now I have a nice little puddle in my hand, so I can just go ahead and enrobe. I don't see the equator, but what I want to start to do is show you how to do some finishing techniques. So when the chocolate is still wet, since I'm doing praline or hazelnut, I have some candied pieces of hazelnut here. So I would take it and I would put it right into the container, and I roll these, and then I lift it out, and I still try to make sure that the flat side is down. Okay? My next one that I do, especially when you do a champagne truffle, The classic coating is always cocoa powder. You want to make sure you have what's called Dutch processed cocoa. That's where the alkali has been taken out, so it's not very bitter. And we just roll them, and then again we pick them up. The cocoa powder is considered the most classic of all truffles. So I have that. I could do a little bit of a sprinkle. And so what I have now, this is the cocoa nib that we talked about in class the other day when we did tempering. So this one would also have to be applied when the chocolate is still wet. So it goes down, I sprinkle just a few cocoa nibs on the top, and that could be my final garnish also. It could be just a couple of sprinkles of nuts. I'm gonna show you how to do a little bit of gold leaf in a second. So when you're working by yourself, which you guys will be, you can probably only dip 5 or 6 at a time, because look, when I'm in perfect temper, you see the one that I just dipped, it's completely set up now. So I would have to go quickly to make sure I could roll it so that my inclusion on the outside adheres. If I were to wait till this was completely set and I put it in here, it doesn't really want to stick. It won't give me a good coating. I'll always have some bare spots. And that's called a bald spot on your truffle. So we don't want that. So it will go right from enrobing into whatever it is my final garnish is. So I'm just going to finish these up, and when I come back, I'm going to show you how to do gold leaf, and we're going to do some striping. So again, it's really important, after about 10 truffles, come back, stir your chocolate, because we need to equalize the temperature. We always need to push everything from the side of the bowl down into the well. After you do about 50, we can always check for temper, because you'll come back and look at the first truffles that you did, and they should be set up already. Okay, so I'm still going. And again, this is when you guys are going to have the most fun. I could roll these in chocolate shavings if I wanted to. Some of you will do that, and that's the truffle called a poodle, because the chocolate shavings kind of look like poodle fur. We could drizzle some spices on it. And so see, now I have a nice little buildup in my hands, so I don't have to re-dip. And then I just enrobe. And again, when I grade these, the first thing I'm going to look for is to make sure we don't have a feet or a foot, and that's this flat piece of chocolate. I'm going to make sure that the flat side is down on the sheet tray. And again, this is our flat side, so we want to make sure that goes down. I'm going to make sure I'm going to wait about 8 hours before I grate it to make sure we don't have any bloom to our chocolate. Bloom to the chocolate would mean that you weren't in temper. Okay, and then we'll check our final garnish. When I actually taste them, because you know I taste everything, I cut every truffle open, and this is what hurts you guys, because you're like, she's wasting all those truffles. But I need to cut in and make sure we don't have any air pockets. So you'll be doing about 2 dozen for me during finals, and I cut into every one of those 2 dozen, okay? So make sure you can't see the equator, make sure flat side goes down, and then I'm going to show you, as soon as all of these are set up, we're going to do some striping, and we'll do some gold leaf on this. So when I'm done, because that glove is on my hand, I'm just going to scrape this against my container. I'm going to clean up a little bit, and then we're going to do some final garnish. I did total enrobing on some of these, and now gold leaf is very popular, so while the chocolate is still tacky, remember, let's take a little piece of gold leaf, let's put it right on. The chocolate will still have to be wet, otherwise the gold leaf is not going to adhere. And I will tell you, because we're pretty good about our food budget that the college gives us, I mean, we always put a lot of gold leaf on, but you'll see some people, and they'll put in just one speck of gold leaf, like one little touch, and that's all they'll put. You would ignore this, because I'll try to take that off. Because gold leaf is quite expensive, so some people, that is all the gold leaf that they're going to put on. But because you know, they're very good with us, this is how much we usually put. So if you were to do this in the industry and you get yelled at, that's because they are really looking at their food cost, okay? So just a little speck, unless you're here at ECC, then we're going to put a little bit more down, okay? Now, another way that we can finish this is called striping. When you stripe, we need to make sure the first set of chocolate is completely set. Otherwise, when I went ahead and striped it, it would just melt into my first layer of enrobing. So I'll take my pastry bag. Always when you stripe, this chocolate has to be tempered too. You can do the same color chocolate. I'm gonna go milk chocolate. And when you stripe, you cut a very small opening in the pastry bag. We start off with the chocolate, and then we come back and we do 2, 3, 4 stripes. We don't want to start on the chocolate because then you'll always get some drips, and then that does not look very professional. So we'll start off, we'll come back and forth, and you go as many times as you can. If your chocolate just, if you have a little bit of a lump in there, again, you can just come back and you go. You'll see some places they'll do a circle, so they'll do a little pipe here, and then they'll just go back and forth with it. So once you start the striping, there's many techniques that you can do, okay? So what we did our truffles, we filled our shell. Remember, it's important that our filling is about 60 to 70 degrees so that it doesn't melt our shell. Once the shell was filled, we let it sit for about a half hour to make sure everything settles in. We capped it, so we put tempered chocolate over that opening. We let that set, and then we did our enrobing. Before you enrobe, guys, make sure that you check that your chocolate is in temper, because we don't want to enrobe 100 truffles and have them not set, because then the chocolate, we have to enrobe again. Chocolate goes on too thick. It would be like a triple dipped malted milk ball. It's too much chocolate. It would overpower the ganache filling. And then right away, you could roll it in your nuts, your cocoa powder. You could, when the chocolate is still tacky, you could put on chopped nuts, just a couple pieces at the top. We did cocoa nibs. You could do your gold leaf. You could let it set up all the way, and then you could do your striping, okay? So what we need to remember is the temperature of the ganache, and for enrobing, our perfect temperature is again 88 to 90 degrees. Once we have that done, remember our shelf life is 6 weeks. Some people can push it up to 8 weeks if they really fill their shells beautifully and they capped off very quickly. As long as oxygen cannot get to your ganache, you get a real nice shelf life. It's when the cap isn't sealed all the way or you enrobe too thin and air can get to that ganache, it will start to mold very quickly. Then my shelf life is only about 3 to 4 days. So always make sure you cap beautifully, okay? After enrobing, make sure you don't get feet. So enrobe enough, and then flat side goes down. Make sure you cannot see the equator, and that's the line from when the truffle shell was made. And so now we would store these at about 60, 65 degrees, away from direct sunlight, because we don't want the chocolate to bloom, and we would never put them in the freezer. Okay, so this is our truffles that we're going to do today. So make sure in your book, look at the different flavors that you want, so when you come in, we can talk and assign flavors right away, so everyone's not flipping through their book, talking to someone else. You have everyone's text number, so just talk amongst yourself, because every flavor will get done, so that at the end of the day, we can taste 8 or 9 flavors, okay? So truffles are on board.